The snow stung Owen's skin like accusations he couldn't escape. "If you choose this gay life, you'll freeze in hell," his mother had screamed 20 years earlier, forcing his 16-year-old knees deeper into the frozen ground behind their Denver home until his jeans soaked through and his tears froze on his lashes. Owen stared at the plain cardboard box on his San Francisco kitchen counter, the return address already printed in neat block letters. Margaret Harlan, 1427, Pine Ridge Road, Denver, Colorado. Gabriel's warm hand settled on his shoulder, steady as always. "You don't have to do this today," he said softly, but Owen shook his head. The package had waited long enough. 20 years. That was how long it had taken for the boy who once knelt in the snow to become the man who designed award-winning civic buildings and stood beside the person he loved without apology. Owen had left Denver the day after high school graduation with nothing but a duffel bag and a scholarship to the University of Colorado Boulder that his mother had tried to cancel. He slept on friends' couches, worked night shifts at a campus coffee shop, and learned to keep his eyes down whenever anyone asked about family. The first time he met someone who understood was sophomore year in a quiet library corner. Tyler, a theater major from Chicago, had slid a note across the table. "You look like you're carrying the world. Want to talk?" They became best friends, the kind who stayed up until dawn arguing about queer theory and sharing cheap ramen. Tyler was the one who dragged Owen to his first Pride parade in Boulder, painting a tiny rainbow flag on his cheek and whispering, "You're allowed to be happy, you know?" But happiness was still fragile. Owen's mother sent letters for the first 2 years, pages of Bible verses and warnings about eternal fire, until he stopped opening them. His father never wrote at all. The silence hurt more than the sermons. Then Gabriel entered his life like sunlight after a long winter. They met at a charity gala in San Francisco 5 years ago. Gabriel was a high school literature teacher with kind eyes and a laugh that made Owen forget the cold for entire evenings. Their first date was a walk along the Embarcadero where Gabriel admitted he had come out to his own parents at 14 and been met with hugs instead of snow. "Different families," he had said simply, squeezing Owen's hand. Owen had never told Gabriel the full story of the kneeling. Not until last month when the letter arrived from his mother. "Your father passed last week. The doctors say I don't have long either. I'd like to see you before I go." "Mom!" The words had sat in his chest like ice. Gabriel held him that night while he shook, not with grief but with something sharper. Rage that had aged into something colder and more deliberate. Now the package was ready. Inside lay a single object wrapped in silver tissue. A small, perfectly preserved block of ice taken from the exact spot behind the old house where Owen had knelt. He had driven back to Denver alone 2 weeks earlier, chiseled the ice at midnight, and flown it home in a cooler. Embedded in the center was a photograph. Owen and Gabriel on their wedding day last summer, laughing under California sunshine, rings glinting. When the ice melted, the photo would be the only thing left. Owen sealed the box with clear tape, wrote the tracking number on his phone, and carried it to the post office before he could change his mind. Gabriel waited on the sidewalk, coffee in hand, eyes full of quiet pride. "Whatever happens next," he said, "you're not that boy in the snow anymore." Owen nodded, but as the package slid across the counter into the clerk's hands, he felt the first crack in the ice he had carried for 2 decades. Back home that evening, Tyler called from New York. Their friendship had survived distance and Owen's occasional silences. "You really sent it?" Tyler asked. Owen described the ice, the photo, the note he had tucked inside. "This is the cold you taught me. I learned to build warmth instead." Tyler whistled low. "Damn, that's poetic justice." Owen laughed, but it was hollow. Justice felt heavier than he expected. The next morning his phone buzzed with an unknown Denver number. He let it go to voicemail. The message was short, his mother's voice thinner than he remembered. "Owen, it's Mom. I received your gift. We need to talk." He deleted it without replying. Gabriel watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "You okay?" Owen pulled him close, breathing in the familiar scent of his husband's cologne. "I will be. Eventually." But the past wasn't done with him yet. 3 days later, the package arrived back in Denver. Margaret Harlan set it on her kitchen table with trembling hands. The ice had begun to sweat inside its insulated box, leaving dark rings on the wood. She pried open the lid and stared at the glistening block. When she lifted it to the light, the photograph inside became visible. Two men in tuxedos, foreheads touching, smiles wide and unafraid. A folded note slipped out. "The cold you gave me melted into my strength. I hope you feel it now." Margaret dropped the ice. It cracked on the tile floor, water spreading like spilled secrets. She sank into a chair, the same chair where she had once read Bible passages aloud while her son knelt outside in the snow. Regret tasted metallic on her tongue. In San Francisco, Owen threw himself into work to avoid thinking. The new community center project demanded long hours, and he welcomed the distraction. His team respected him. No one knew about the kneeling or the package. At the weekly design meeting, colleague Lena praised his latest renderings. "You always find a way to make spaces feel safe," she said. Owen smiled tightly, wondering if safety was something he had ever truly known. Gabriel noticed the distance. One evening he set 2 glasses of wine on the coffee table and waited. "Talk to me," he said gently. Owen stared into the ruby liquid. "I keep seeing her face that day, the way she looked at me like I was already damned. And now I've sent her proof that I'm living the life she warned me against." Gabriel took his hands. "You sent her the truth. That's not revenge, Owen. That's honesty." But honesty carried weight. The next weekend Tyler flew in for a visit, bringing his usual chaotic energy and a bottle of good scotch. They sat on the balcony overlooking the bay while Tyler recounted his latest dating disasters. "At least your mother finally knows you're married to an amazing man," Tyler said. Owen laughed despite himself. Later, after Tyler crashed on the couch, Gabriel pulled Owen into bed and held him through the night. "You're allowed to feel everything," he whispered. "Anger, sadness, even a little pride. You survived her winter." Owen woke at 4 a.m. to his phone lighting up. Another voicemail from Denver. This time he listened. His mother's voice cracked. "The ice melted. I sat with that photo until sunrise. I was wrong, Owen. I was so wrong." He played it twice, then deleted it again. The words should have thawed something inside him. Instead they lodged like fresh frost. Work became a refuge. He spent 12-hour days refining blueprints, meeting with city officials who praised his vision for inclusive public spaces. One afternoon, a young intern named Marcus confided quietly that he was struggling to come out to his conservative family. Owen listened, then shared just enough of his own story to give the boy hope. "It gets warmer," he told Marcus. "You build the fire yourself." That night, he cooked Gabriel's favorite risotto and told him about the conversation. Gabriel's eyes shone with quiet pride. "See? You're already melting the snow for someone else." But the past refused to stay frozen. Margaret Harlan's health declined faster than the doctors predicted. Her sister called Owen's office line because he still hadn't answered his cell. "She's in hospice now," Aunt Claire said without preamble. "She asks for you every day." Owen hung up and stared at the city skyline from his 23rd floor window. Gabriel found him there an hour later, forehead pressed to the cool glass. "We can fly out tomorrow," Gabriel offered. Owen shook his head. "She doesn't get to decide when the thawing happens." Instead he drove to the beach alone that weekend, walking the cold sand until his shoes were ruined. He thought about the friendships that had carried him when family failed, Tyler's relentless humor, Lena's steady support. The chosen family he and Gabriel had built over Sunday brunches and pride parades. He thought about the nights he had cried in Gabriel's arms after nightmares of snow. Back home, Gabriel waited with open arms and no questions. They made love slowly, not with urgency but with the deep certainty of 2 men who had chosen each other through every storm. Afterward, Gabriel traced the faint scar on Owen's knee, the one that never quite healed from that winter night. "This is part of you," he said, "but it doesn't own you." The next morning another letter arrived, handwritten on pale blue stationery. Margaret's handwriting had grown shaky. "I kept every letter I sent you. I read them again last night. I see now how cruel they were. The snow I made you kneel in was nothing compared to the cold I kept in my own heart. Please come. Or at least let me hear your voice. Owen folded the letter and placed it inside the same box the ice had come in. Then he mailed it back empty except for one new item. A single pressed flower from their wedding bouquet. Bright, alive, impossible to freeze. Tyler called that evening, voice serious for once. Dude, you're playing with fire. Or ice. Whatever. Just make sure you're doing this for you, not to punish her. Owen considered the words while Gabriel cooked dinner in the background. I think I'm doing it to finally let the ice melt on my own terms. The following week brought unexpected warmth. Marcus, the intern, invited Owen and Gabriel to a small coming-out party his friends were throwing. The apartment was filled with laughter and rainbow flags. Owen watched Marcus hug his chosen family and felt something loosen in his chest. Later, driving home along the dark highway, Gabriel said quietly, "You're helping him skip the kneeling part." Owen reached over and squeezed his husband's hand. For the first time in months, the gesture didn't feel weighted by the past. But Denver was still calling. The hospice nurse left a message at 2 a.m. Your mother is asking for you. She's lucid but fading fast. Owen lay awake until dawn. Gabriel's even breathing the only anchor in the room. At sunrise, he made a decision. He booked 2 tickets for the next morning. Gabriel didn't argue. Simply packed a small bag and held Owen's hand through security. The flight to Denver felt shorter than it should have. The Rocky Mountains below them glittering white like old accusations. At the hospice door, Owen paused. Gabriel kissed his temple. I'll be right here. Margaret looked smaller than Owen remembered, swallowed by the hospital bed and too many blankets. Her eyes opened when he stepped inside. For a long moment neither spoke. Then she whispered, "You came." Owen sat in the chair beside her, the same distance he had once knelt from her. "I came because I needed to see if the cold was still there." She reached for his hand with surprising strength. "It's gone. Your gift melted everything I thought I knew." Tears slipped down her wrinkled cheeks. "I was so afraid of what people would say, of losing you to a life I didn't understand. I punished you for my fear." Owen listened as she spoke of regret, of sleepless nights after the ice arrived, of finally understanding that love between men wasn't a choice but a truth. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he said simply, "I forgave you the day I married Gabriel. I just needed you to know what your winter felt like." They talked for hours, about his father's quiet sadness, about the letters she had burned in shame, about the life Owen had built despite everything. Gabriel joined them eventually, shaking Margaret's hand with gentle dignity. She looked between them and smiled for the first time. "He's good for you." That night in the hotel, Owen cried in Gabriel's arms. Not from pain but from the strange relief of watching ice turn to water. The next morning Margaret was weaker. She asked Owen to read from the Bible she kept by the bed. Not the verses of condemnation but the ones about love. He read until her breathing evened. When he closed the book she whispered, "Thank you for the flower. It was beautiful." She passed quietly 2 days later. Owen and Gabriel stayed for the small service. Only a handful of relatives attended. At the graveside, Owen placed the melted remnants of the ice block, now just a small puddle in a jar, beside her headstone. Back in San Francisco, life resumed, but lighter. Tyler flew out again to celebrate with them, and Marcus brought his new boyfriend to Sunday brunch. Owen watched the table full of chosen family and felt the last shard of frost dissolve. Months passed. Owen finished the community center project to citywide acclaim. The opening ceremony drew hundreds, including city officials who praised the building's warm, inclusive design. Gabriel stood beside him cutting the ribbon, their rings catching the sunlight. In his speech, Owen spoke briefly about creating spaces where no one had to kneel in the cold. The audience applauded, unaware of the personal meaning. At home that evening, Gabriel surprised him with a small wrapped box. Inside was a delicate glass sculpture, an ice block with a flower frozen at its center. "So you remember how far you've come," Gabriel said. Owen pulled him into a kiss that tasted of gratitude and forever. Tyler called the next week with news of his own engagement. "Your story gave me courage," he admitted. Owen laughed. Look at us. All grown up and still figuring it out. Life settled into a rhythm of work, love, and quiet joy. Owen volunteered at an LGBT youth center, mentoring teenagers who reminded him of his younger self. One boy, barely 16, confided that his parents had threatened to send him to conversion camp. Owen shared just enough of his own history to offer hope. You get to write the next chapter, he told the kid. Make it warmer than the one they planned. Gabriel watched these moments with pride that never dimmed. Their marriage grew deeper, conversations stretching late into the night about dreams, fears, and the family they might build through adoption one day. Then one ordinary Tuesday, a letter arrived from Aunt Claire. Inside was a small envelope addressed in Margaret's handwriting, dated the day before she died. Owen opened it with steady hands. My dearest son, the ice you sent me thawed more than my heart. It showed me the man you became despite me. I am so proud of you and Gabriel. Thank you for teaching me, even at the end, what real love looks like. Forever your mother. Owen folded the letter and placed it beside the glass sculpture. Gabriel wrapped arms around him from behind. She finally understood. Owen nodded, voice thick. And I finally let the winter end. Spring arrived early in San Francisco. Owen and Gabriel walked the same Embarcadero path where they had shared their first date, hands linked without hesitation. Cherry blossoms drifted on the breeze, soft and pink against the blue sky. Owen stopped at the railing overlooking the water and turned to his husband. I used to think the cold defined me, he said. Now I know it was just the season before the thaw. Gabriel smiled, the same gentle smile that had melted years of frost. And look at the garden we grew. They stood in comfortable silence, watching sailboats glide across the bay. Owen thought of the boy who had knelt in Denver snow, the man who had sent ice across state lines, and the husband who stood beside him now, strong, loved, free. The journey had been long, filled with misunderstandings, quiet betrayals by fear itself, sacrifices of pride, and moments of pure awakening. But every step had led here, to warmth that no winter could touch. Later that evening, as they cooked dinner together, Owen's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. I came out to my parents today. They didn't understand, but they're trying. Thank you. Owen smiled and showed Gabriel the message. Another flower blooming, Gabriel said softly. Owen set the phone aside and pulled his husband close. The apartment smelled of garlic and rosemary. Laughter echoed from the open window where neighbors called greetings. Life felt full, complete, and entirely his own. Yet as he drifted towards sleep that night, one question lingered in the quiet space between heartbeats. Was the chilling gift Owen sent his mother an act of necessary truth that finally set them both free, or did it cross the line into cruelty he had once endured? True or false?